Okay, so I'm Kimberley Peto, and I'm originally from Canada and grew up there. Lived all over the U.S. With my first marriage and moved back to Canada, where I was educated as first an accountant and business administrator, which is where I spent most of my career, and then eventually went back to school and took psychology and an extra year towards a master's degree that I never completed in ancient art and architecture. And from there, got divorced and moved into a situation where I was a single mom, so really didn't have any leisure time to create. So was focused more on my accounting background, I guess. And then from there, met and married my second husband, whom I then had a little bit more free time to be able to create. My children were no longer at home, so I had gone back to my childhood and my love for writing and art and all things creative, and I was secure in my career, my day career, so I was able to have more money to be able to create. It does cost money to create, unfortunately. Art supplies are not cheap. So I spent a lot of time experimenting, and through a process of learning that I loved art and I was really good at art and writing, decided over the course of probably the last 10 years to start combining the two into a healing methodology for myself. So went from not just writing or doing art, but doing them together. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I've rebranded recently into the illustrative poet. So most of my, I still do things independent of one another, create art and create writing independent of one another, because you can't always be focused to sit down and do both at the same time. But more and more I'm finding that they're merging really nicely together. So my most recent exhibition was completely on illustrated art and illustrated poetry, and starting to merge a little bit more of my deeper healing. A lot of surface stuff happened in the early parts of my art career, I guess you could say. And now I'm merging more into some of the depths of who I really am and exposing myself a little bit more, which has always been very difficult for me to do. I don't like to share who I am with people, because that means you're being vulnerable and it can be held against you in a court of law. And so I basically have learned through my art that it's okay to expose yourself and be vulnerable, and somehow in that vulnerability I have found connection with people on a level that I never ever anticipated that I would before, and that's very healing and that's very comforting, because it helps you to express who you really, really are. Who I am is not an accountant. That's who I was, or who I was trying to pretend to be. Who I am is not a mother. That's who I was for many years, but that's not who I am. That's a role that I played. But who I am now is an artist and a writer trying to heal and find out who she is and discovering that. And the arts and the creativity helps you to do that better than anything else I've ever found. So better than any therapist, better than any hypnotherapy, better than anything that I've paid thousands of dollars to other people through workshops and retreats, whatever you want to call it. And so that's where I'm at right now, is an artist who is working on healing herself and hopefully eventually helping to heal others through not only my own art, but through helping them to discover their own artistic value. So that's basically who I am right now. A statement on any of my websites, I talk about how I really like art that's unframed. And so when you go to a gallery, an expensive gallery, in Soho or LA or somewhere, or some of the bigger cities, art is always framed. Why? Because somebody wants to hang out on a wall somewhere and forget about it, and that piece that you just spent $400,000 on, the artist never saw it framed. It was unframed. And I think that's where value of a piece is. I prefer to look at a piece of art before it's framed, and to see the rawness that was there with what the artist originally intended it to be. Plain canvas, throw some paint on it, throw some emotion on it, and you've got something that's beautiful. I think life is like that too. I think the more unframed you live your life, the more you don't put a pretty bow around it, you don't put a pretty picture frame around it for people to gloss past on a wall, where you actually sit there raw and unframed in front of someone and you're vulnerable with them. I think that's where you find the uniqueness in somebody. That's where you connect with people. We don't connect on superficial levels with art, and we don't connect on superficial levels with people. So I think with me combining my art, my writings, which is my thoughts, to me my art is my emotion, and the thoughts are what creates the emotion. So the writing and the art merge really, really well together. They merge nicely into a final product that really speaks to who I am. So, which is hopefully somewhat of an unframed individual. If you were to ask me to explain any one of these poems here, I can explain it now in hindsight, but if you would have asked me to lay down those thoughts on paper ahead of when it was created, I would never have been able to do that. And I for certain would never have been able to verbalize it. So somehow in the process of writing, there's inspiration given that gives you hindsight later that you can then say, okay, I get what I was trying to get at there with my higher self, but I would never have been able to express that ahead of time. So it's definitely 100% inspiration. I think any good artist is. I think if you have to sit down, the thing that bothers me the most about, I guess, modern education is you're told what to do, right? Like very few classes in university are creatively driven, unless you're taking a creative writing course. Most professors want you to write in APA format, right? In APA format, I want you to write about a specific topic within specific parameters using specific journals, right? That have only articles that have been written by scholarly people, which negates the fact that anybody who's not scholarly could ever possibly write something good, that could then be quoted years later. But there's this lack of creativity in the educational system right now, which doesn't allow for inspiration. And unless you're in some scientific fields, I guess, where, creativity and innovation are important, which is inspiration, right? Disguised within science, right? Innovation is inspiration disguised within science. So, but I think, what I do is pretty much almost always 100% inspiration from somewhere that I don't know. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in, I come from a religious background, but I kind of take a holistic approach to spirituality, I guess, and metaphysicality, which kind of combines a lot of truths. And it's interesting to me how you were talking about, you're looking through all of these different pieces of literature or whatever, to find what the commonality is, which is your branding of saying I'm looking for truth, right? I'm looking for what is considered to be truth on a universal scale, and I want to write about that. And that's great. I'm hoping that when I create through inspiration, clearly, without any agenda, that somehow there is commonality there. Just by the fact that I'm human, right? So I read a really nice little quote on a cup given to me from my favorite restaurant earlier this year, where it just said, I am human and I love you because you're human too. It's the most common thing we have in common with one another, is that we're human. We are not spirit. We are not animals. We are not, we're human. And so there's a common experience we have in being human. And if you play into that and you allow your inspiration to guide you towards the fact that we're all human, I think there will be some sort of universality in that, unless you're alien. No. Then there's not. Okay. I do not like typically older music. I'm not a fan of Elvis. I'm not a fan of the Beatles. they have 2 songs that I like, Come Together and Obla Di Obla Da, but other than that, I don't really care for them. I tend to evolve my musical taste as I get older. So I started somewhere around, I was born in the late 60s, so I start somewhere around the tail end of the 70s and 80s with some stuff I did like, but even back then I liked more alternative music. So I was listening to Slipknot and, some of these other bands when I was younger, as opposed to maybe Wham or like whoever was popular at the time, right? I've never been like a big fan of whatever is current pop music until recently. So as my children have got older and they're, in their 20s and early 30s now, I have become more attuned to listening to what they listen to, what's pop, because it bonds me to them. But traditionally, if I'm sitting in my house and I'm like wanting to listen to music, it really depends on my mood. If I'm in a cleaning mood, I probably am listening to rap or some of the more current, really dirty music, like by Nicki Minaj, like pump me up, like get me like crazy in a good cleaning mood. But just to relax and listen, I prefer to listen to classical music. Classicals or old musical theater I really, really like and enjoy. Today, in this world, I find, especially in the last, say, 20 years, 15 to 20 years especially, it's just a remix. Everything's a remix of what used to be. So they're taking a really good song from, like the 70s or 80s from Eric Clapton or somebody that was classic for a good lyricist maybe, and they're taking the lyrics and they're putting a new beat to it, which to me is totally destroying. It's totally destroying the syntax of the music itself, the enjoyment of listening to it as it was originally intended to be listened to. Now, having said that, I'm sure that if somebody took my poetry and made it into a rap and 20 years down the road it made a #1 hit song, I'd be totally okay with that.
Billboard.
Yes, on a billboard, yeah. But I really just listen to everything. It really depends on my mood, and I really like country music to dance to, which is, I don't like country music to listen to, but like if I'm dancing, I really like it. I'm not a really big, huge fan of 70s and 80s rock and roll. So sometimes they say you know more about, a friend of mine a little while ago, he said, you need to learn who you are, but also who you are not. And I think for me, the music I don't like speaks more about me than the music that I do like.
So. I can relate.
Yeah. I love food. I'm a little bit of a foodie. I worked in restaurants all my life, part-time, here and there, to supplement my income or just to keep from being bored sometimes, And I really learned to enjoy food a lot. So my favorites would I prefer to cook than to go out to eat. Like I would prefer to actually make food. I was married to a Hungarian for a while, so I really like to make traditional Eastern European foods, like heavy, very unhealthy for you foods, but I still love them, like chicken paprikash and gnocchi. I like to make gnocchi. I love Italian food. If I go out to eat, I typically want to go out for steak, which I don't cook for myself very often, or Italian food, but I really do like to try everything. Like, if it's food, I'm going to eat it. Like, there's nothing that I don't like. The only food I think that's off my list of, like, don't eat this is okra, which nobody even knows what it is, and everybody thinks it's gross. I like weird things that other people don't like mushrooms. Like, I love mushrooms. I love to try all different kinds of mushrooms. My friend Roberto brought me some really interesting mushrooms. I still have no idea what they were. They're not magic mushrooms, I know, because those would be totally on my list, but that's ingesting something that's a food that's got alternative purposes. But I just really, really love anything, and I like trying to make new foods. I find Mexican food here in this part of Mexico is not so interesting, I guess, because the ingredients are very staple. So you have rice and you have beans, and I don't think anybody here makes good refried beans. I make better refried beans than all of Mexico does. But there's a restaurant in La Pinita that I love to go to. It's called Casa Rosetta. And the chef there and the manager, her name's Andrea, and she's just a fantastic chef because she kind of takes Mexican cuisine and she puts a twist on it and makes it more, it looks more like French cuisine, so you're only getting a little tiny bit of food on your plate compared to, like, you know, if you go down to the beach and you ask for a traditional Mexican dish, you know, say it's shrimp, you know, you're getting a shrimp dish and you've got like this much food. But it's all kind of bland and the same everywhere you go. But you go to her place and you get this much food, but it's packed with such a punch of flavor, you know, that it more than satisfies your tongue. So you're like, I want to go there and eat that, even though I'm not, I mean, none of us needs a big plate of food anyways, but it's, I just like when people take food and they make it into art. That's a good way of putting it. When someone takes food and makes it into it. My dream when I moved to Mexico was actually to start up a restaurant similar to what Casa Rosetta has now, but different, maybe even better. But have some, every night would be from a different country. So like Monday would be like Italian night, and Tuesday would be maybe Asian night. So you could choose from anything from like Thai to, you know, Korean cuisine, whatever it might be. And every night would be a different night, but it would also be an art gallery, and also a place where we could do like poetry slams and different things like that, which we don't really have anywhere like that here in town. I know there's a couple people that are trying to create something like that, but it's not the same vision as what I have. But the food would be exquisite, like it would be top notch, but at a decent, affordable price, because I don't think you should have to sacrifice your budget to be able to engage in good cuisine. So I just like all food, every food. If I had to say what's my favorite food, it's probably a really, really well done pasta. Like really, really well done pasta with good sauce. And drinks, well, my go-to drink is always a very dirty martini with Bombay Sapphire gin. Straight up, no vermouth, please. And stirred, not shaken. And aside from that, I really love a very good red wine. I really love Amarone. It's my favorite. Or a Valpolicella, like Italian wines typically. I do like a good Pinot Noir. I love a good Gewürztraminer. As far as white wines go, it's probably the only white wine I really, really do like. But unfortunately, in Mexico, our selection is rather horrible. I haven't found any very good Mexican wines yet, and nor have I found very many good wines that have been made, say, from California down into South America even, that I really enjoy. So I'm a little bit of a wine snob, and I'm allowed to be, so I do. But I really do love a really good glass of red wine, and every once in a while they'll bring something really nice into one of the stores in Puerto Vallarta, and I'll splurge and, you know, get a ridiculously expensive bottle of wine, which is, you know, 1,000 to 2,000 pesos, I guess, here. But I like a good wine. Other than that, I drink a lot of water. Like every day, I drink a lot of water, and I like to infuse waters and put different, you know, cucumber, lime, different kinds of fruits and vegetables into the water to flavor it or whatever, because I'm not particularly fond of plain water, but I do drink a lot of water. So, but that's basically, I'm not a beer girl. I will drink beer, but I'm not a beer girl. I appreciate a good craft beer. I appreciate the art that goes into that, but the flavors are not something that adjusts well to my palate.
And about movies or things, or, you know,
like
Netflix
films.
or...
So I don't watch television. I don't have like cable or anything like that. Once per year, I try and binge watch during rainy season, like it is right now, some sort of Netflix something. Right now, I'm doing Sex Life. Last year, I did Outlander, which has also got a lot of sex in it. There seems to be a theme here. But it also goes back to Scottish ancestry, which I have some in my chart. So I really am interested in learning more about the culture. So typically if I'm watching something, it's because it's a learning opportunity for me. I'm not watching it for the pleasure or the leisure of simply watching something. I don't watch it to escape. You know, a lot of people watch television or movies or whatever to escape. I do that through my own brain more than I need to, so I don't need to have another outlet for it. Very Neptunian. But I typically don't watch a lot of television. I am addicted to Grey's Anatomy. Don't ask me why. I think it's because it bonds me to my daughter, who's a nurse, who is also addicted to Grey's Anatomy, and we tend to binge watch it together when I go home to Canada. So I think it's more of a connection type of thing than it is the actual show itself, although it's been developed into a little bit of an obsession for McDreamy and McSteamy and all the mix. So, but typically I don't watch television. I never watch the news. If something comes across, like say social media, or someone brings it to my awareness that something's going on in the world, I find I'm an empath, so a lot of that negative energy that's out there in social media and in the news really overwhelms me, and so I tend to kind of stay away from it. I want to be informed, of course, and if there's something going on, especially in the local community or whatever, I want to be aware of it in case there's something I can do, maybe with my art or with my voice or dollars or whatever it might be, to help a situation, but I don't really want to hear about it. I find that I try to disengage as much as possible from that sort of thing. But I do love going to see a first-run movie, and especially if it's got some sort of message to it. So recently, my favorite movie was, what's the one with, well, I saw Cruella, which I really, really enjoyed for pleasure, I guess, more than anything. But I actually went back and watched it a second time, which I often do, for the cinematography and the artistic point of view on it, because it was very well done. The fashion was like unbelievable. So it's an old story that everybody knows since childhood, but it was more about the artistry that I really engaged in. I went to see it because a friend wanted to go see it. But I also went and saw, I'm trying to think of the name because it's different in Spanish than in English. I'll have to look it up. It's the movie where the woman goes out. It's called Beautiful Revenge.
Oh, yeah. I think
Hermosa Venganza, I think, in Spanish.
Yeah.
Hermosa Venganza.
Hermosa Venganza. So
So it translates different to English. It's not Beautiful Revenge in English, but that's how it translates. Because the message was so strong, it gave me chills when I watched it. Because the whole premise of the movie is about, women being taken advantage of, especially when they're drunk, and a lot of that happens here. And it brought in a lot of undertones about, being a woman in society now, years and years and years and years after the law has already written for us equality, but we're still engaging in inequality. And so that was really, really a powerful message for me. And also the fact that there's people out there that do actually martyr themselves for a cause still, and that should never have to happen in this day and age. Why are we still having to martyr ourselves? And it took me back to, there was a movie several years ago that I also really enjoyed. It was called The Life of David Gale. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah.
But it's where, it's about capital punishment, and how, again, there's a martyrdom that takes place in that movie, and that should never have to happen in this day and age. Why is it still happening? It's revolting to me, and it's discouraging, but it's still a message that needs to be played over and over again until everybody hears it. So I like movies that have a message like that, especially if it's surrounding inequality. I really loved The Joker. It's a pop culture movie, but I really enjoyed, I thought that Joaquin Phoenix's performance was his top performance. I think the way that he presented how mental illness can actually not be mentally ill was beautiful. I thought it was very, very interesting how he did that. And some people in society, I get why they, according to us normal people, go off the deep end, because they are bullied to the point of, you know, I've experienced a lot of bullying in my life, and I related so strongly to him, and I'm still experiencing it in this community, which is really, really sad in this day and age, you know, that people think that they need to take another person and make them feel less than themselves to make themselves feel better. I will never ever resonate with that, and I hope the world eventually gets to the point where nobody resonates with that. But that's the theme of that movie, really, really hit home with me. So that's the kind of movies and things I like, is something that's going to make me think or make the world think, you know. I think if you're using your art for a platform to say something that needs to be said, that's the way we're going to reach people. We're not going to reach people by preaching to them, you know, by taking them to Sunday school. You know, we're not going to teach people that way. We're going to teach people by using the methodologies that they're using to communicate with one another: social media, art, you know, film, music, whatever it might be. So,
yeah, I agree.
movies with a message.
Mm-hmm.